Newt Gingrich coasted to victory in South Carolina, but here in Florida, where it's winner take all, the polls show him lagging behind Mitt Romney. An NBC News Marist poll Sunday found the former Massachusetts governor leading by 20 percentage points among likely Republican primary voters in Florida. But the polls here also show something else, a gender gap that could, in part, explain why Gingrich is behind. According to a public policy polling survey of likely voters in Florida earlier this week, Gingrich had 8 points less support from women than men. By contrast, Romney had 10 points more support among female voters. A second poll in Florida by CNN Time ORC International, also released this week, showed a similar slant. Susan McManus is a professor at the University of South Florida and one of the state's foremost experts on electoral politics here. She says the support Gingrich received from women in South Carolina won't be repeated here.
In South Carolina, a large portion of the voters were evangelical Christians. They have a more conservative view of families, and women there are a little bit more conservative and sort of in sync with their husbands more. Whereas in this state, you have a larger number of single women, you have a larger number of older women, and boomers and senior women, I think, here are leaning, in the polls that I've looked at, pretty heavily towards Romney.
Betsy Young, a former president of the Republican Women's Club of Deval Federated in Jacksonville, one of Florida's largest conservative women's clubs, says Gingrich's background may make it difficult for him to gain female support.
Some people are probably upset about the fact that he's had 3 marriages, and it's very difficult for a woman to look at something like that and not somehow be concerned.
Another is Megan Tarsitano, who's siding with Romney over Gingrich. The vice president of the Jacksonville Young Republicans says Gingrich's personal life is a turn-off for women Republicans.
I have had people come and tell me that they specifically were not going to vote for Gingrich because of that issue. And I know for me personally, it is something that I look at it as a character issue that I do take into consideration.
But for some women in Florida, it's not just Gingrich's infidelities they find disagreeable.
Gingrich's problem with some women here is not just his marital issues. It's the tone and the style and the combative nature of his discourse and debates. There have been many studies about women in politics and women that find that that is not an appealing strategy necessarily.
Still, some polls indicate Gingrich's female trouble might not be as much of an issue elsewhere in the country. A Wall Street Journal NBC poll of Republican voters nationwide this week found 39% of Republican men back Gingrich, compared with 35% of women. And the combative tone that has turned off some women isn't as much of an issue for Kay Day. The Jacksonville journalist plans to vote for Gingrich, although she admits Rick Perry was her first choice. She says the balanced budgets during Gingrich's tenure as House Speaker are more important to her than anything else.
People call him grandiose. Some of our greatest men were grandiose, and none of them were perfect. Some of the best presidents, praised by the right and the left, went into office against great criticism. Reagan comes to mind, JFK. But they did good things for the people. That's what I'm interested in.
A lifelong Republican, Betsy Young says she'll support Gingrich if he wins the nomination. She just doesn't think he can win a general election. And some of the negative campaigning that has hit Gingrich in Florida, especially among women voters, may also affect his support elsewhere as the campaign moves forward.
I don't think that Newt Gingrich can beat Obama because I think there are a lot of people who do not like what he stands for. May not be in Florida, may not be in like it was in South Carolina, but I think once you get out to the Midwest, you're going to find it.
For the Wall Street Journal, this is Neil Hickey in Jacksonville, Florida.